The neighborhood had the kind of polished perfection that belonged on the cover of a real estate magazine. Every lawn was trimmed to an exact length, every pastel-colored house freshly painted, their shutters gleaming as though they'd never known a storm. Rows of ornamental trees stood in perfect symmetry, their blossoms spilling across sidewalks that looked as though they had been scrubbed daily. To an outsider, it was a picture of peace, a promise of security in a world that felt increasingly uncertain. For Emily, though, it was never that simple. A single mother of one, she had learned the hard way that appearances could be deceiving. She had moved here for her daughter Lily's sake, hoping the quiet, orderly streets would be a safer, gentler place to raise her. After the accident, every choice Emily made was measured against a single goal: giving Lily the best possible life despite the permanent injury that confined her to a wheelchair. She longed for stability, for healing, for a sense of belonging. But even on her first day, as she carried boxes into their new home, Emily felt an uneasiness beneath the charm, as though the very peace she'd come searching for could splinter with the lightest touch. Wasn't long before Emily noticed the woman who seemed to watch her every move. Margaret, though whispered about as Karen in hushed, nervous tones by the other residents, was the self-declared queen of the neighborhood. She chaired the homeowners association with an iron grip, patrolling the sidewalks like a soldier on duty. Her ever-present clipboard was her weapon, her sharp tongue her shield. She noticed everything: a flower bed out of place, a recycling bin left a foot too far from the curb, a child's bicycle leaning against a fence, and she judged everything. From the moment Emily and Lily arrived, Margaret's eyes followed them. Not with the warmth of welcome or even the idle curiosity of a neighbor, but with something sharper, like a hawk circling prey. Emily had experienced judgment before, the kind that came from people who didn't understand what it meant to raise a disabled child, but this felt different. Margaret's glances were dissecting, as though she was already calculating violations, already preparing her list of complaints. It didn't take long for Emily to understand. In Margaret's world, they were not going to be allowed to simply blend in. Still, Emily tried to brush it off, telling herself she was imagining things. For Lily's sake, she needed this place to work. Lily was only 8, small for her age, her soft brown curls often escaping the ribbons Emily tied in her hair. Her pale face carried the traces of pain she'd endured, yet her eyes sparkled with a brightness far beyond her years. The accident had taken her ability to walk, but it had not stolen her spirit. When Lily laughed, pure, unrestrained, and bubbling from the depths of her little chest, it was as though the whole block lit up. Neighbors would turn their heads, surprised by the sound, and often they smiled in spite of themselves. For Emily, that laugh was life itself. It was the reason she had survived countless sleepless nights spent sobbing into her pillow, wondering how she could possibly raise her daughter alone. Lily's joy was a reminder that even in pain, beauty remained, and Emily had sworn, with every ounce of her strength, that nothing and no one would ever take that joy away from her daughter. One warm evening, as the sky blushed with streaks of pink and orange, Emily wheeled Lily down the sidewalk so she could feel the evening breeze on her cheeks. Lily clapped her hands in delight as a butterfly floated past, fragile wings glowing in the last of the sun. The sound of her laughter carried across the block, drawing the attention of neighbors who paused their gardening or dog walking to smile at the little girl's happiness. But not Margaret. Standing by her prized rose bushes, Margaret's lips pressed into a thin, disapproving line. Her eyes narrowed as though the sound of Lily's laughter itself was a violation of neighborhood order. She shook her head and muttered just loudly enough for Emily to hear, "She shouldn't be out here making that noise." For Emily's chest clenched, heat rising to her face. Every instinct screamed to defend her daughter, but she forced herself to smile politely and wheel Lily back toward their yard. She would not let Margaret's bitterness tarnish Lily's moment of joy. Still, as Emily tucked her daughter into bed that night, the words echoed in her mind like an ugly refrain, wrapping around her thoughts until unease seeped into her bones. After Lily drifted into sleep, her small hands curled around a worn stuffed rabbit, Emily stood by the window, staring across the street. Margaret was there, pacing her property line with the same restless authority she had displayed during the day. Under the harsh white glare of a street lamp, her clipboard gleamed as she scribbled furious notes, her shadow stretching unnaturally long across the perfectly edged grass. Emily's stomach turned. The peace she had clung to, the fragile hope that this neighborhood would be different, was already cracking. Margaret's eyes were no longer simply critical. They burned with something personal, something bitter and consuming. This wasn't about sidewalk chalk or the placement of trash cans. It was about Lily, about Emily. She couldn't explain why, but she felt certain of it. Margaret's resentment was growing, and resentment had a way of twisting into something darker, something dangerous. Emily had no way of knowing then how quickly things would spiral. Within weeks, Margaret's cold stares and muttered complaints would fester into obsession. That obsession would take root like poison ivy, spreading until it bore cruelty so vicious it would tear through the fragile stability Emily had of that night. With exhaustion heavy on her shoulders, Emily whispered a promise over Lily's sleeping form. "I'll keep you safe, no matter what." But even as the vow left her lips, she saw Margaret pause mid-step across the street. Slowly, deliberately, the woman turned her head. Their eyes locked, and for the briefest instant, Margaret's lips curved into a smirk. The sight froze Emily's blood. It wasn't the smirk itself. It was the message it carried. A warning, a challenge, a declaration of power. In that moment, Emily knew with chilling certainty that something was coming. Something that would test every ounce of her strength, every shred of her love, and every corner of her will to survive. And deep down, she feared that no matter how fiercely she fought, she and Lily were about to be dragged into a storm that would change their lives forever. Ought to build.